All right, guys, I've been tracking the orb strategy across the last 3 months, trying to figure out which session, the New York, London, or Tokyo session, which one of these sessions does this strategy work the best for. I've been tracking and it's been pretty even across the board, I would have to say. With London, I would say having the slight edge as far as easier to implement. New York also, but then Tokyo gets some pretty big moves itself. So for this month, let's see exactly what happened and which session took the cake as far as the most successful, most profitable session for this particular strategy, which is the orb strategy. So if you haven't been following me, go check out those videos where I lay out the orb strategy in detail, step by step, if you aren't sure. Now, let's get into the particulars because I don't want to waste too much time. And if you guys don't know the statistics or the metrics that I'm following, I should say, for this particular model is going to be how far, right? How much of a profit, how much risk to reward that we were able to get on each and every single day. What kind of retest? Because I look for a retest. Like I want the retest of the 5-minute candle range to identify which is the most common way that the breakout occurs. Does it retest at all? Does it retest the trend line? Does it retest fair value gaps? Does it retest a fair value gap plus the trend line? I want to know which retest type is going to be the best confirmation as far as direction. And then whether there's any manipulation prior to the big move, yes or no. And then was my stop loss triggered or was the trade successful, yes or no? And on, I have screenshots of every single one of these. If you guys want to see all of this data, you can go to my description, check out the links, check out my socials. I share all this with my communities, all the spreadsheets and all of the back data, so you guys have somewhat of a semblance or form some sort of context for this particular trade. So that being said, let's look at some of the results. So let's start with New York first, since this is the one session that I trade the most. And if you look at this session, it was pretty damn good this last month. With only 12% of the time did it come back and actually hit my stop loss. So this is an 88% win rate if you know how to avoid the manipulation, which is the hard part. Okay, if you know that's going to manipulate, 42% of the time it's going to manipulate, so about 50% of the time it's going to go the wrong direction first, right, and then go in the right direction. And there are hints on how to navigate that, and I have videos for all of that as well. Retest type, how is it coming back? Is it coming back, for example, if we take a look at today's trade, you can see how it exited the range, right? So this box here is the first 5-minute candle, and now once it broke out of the range, how did it come back to retest? It came back and retested the trend line, right? And you could also say it came back and filled this fair value gap before it came down. So I would say that's a fair value gap plus trend line retest. So it broke the zone, it broke it up here, but when you came back to get the retest, what happened? It came straight down. So that technically was not a retest, right? So you got to wait for the retest. That is the trick, right? So it came in, the retest was right here, right? Trend line, and then it expanded. So that is what I'm looking for. I'm trying to figure out what type of retest happens most often. And for the New York session, the retest type that happens most often is the trend line retest, right? About 36% of the time it retests the trend line. No retest about 21% of the time. Fair value gap plus a trend line 12%, and then 30% of the time just the fair value gap by itself. It does not come all the way back to the trend line. Okay, so that's very important to understand. This is probably the most important part of this whole trade, is understanding how it retests. Okay, and then as far as distribution goes, the most profitable was probably holding for about 3R for this particular session on the New York session. And you can see almost anything after that, anything after 3R looks like it's going to be strong, because only about 10% of the time does it do less than 3R, which is, I'm sorry, less than a 2R, but so I guess it would be more like about 36% of the time is it going to be less than 3 multiples, right? 3 multiples. If you don't know what the multiple is, the multiple of your risk, right? So your multiple for this particular strategy, you grab the risk reward tool. If you guys don't know how to use this, I could go ahead and pin that in the description for you guys. I will link that for you guys on how to use this tool. Now, essentially you're taking this part, right? This is stop loss, and you're multiplying however many multiples of this space or this distance in the rest of the trade. So there was a multiple of 4. I can't even read that, 9 something, right? 4.9 to 1. which is your risk right here. So you got about 4-to-1 risk to reward on this particular move, right? And that is what this column is all about, right? That's going to tell you how much distance you got in relation to the amount you risked. Now, okay, and so I'll post all these inside of my Telegram. You guys can check that out if you guys want. And then let's just check out the other sessions. Okay, so let's look at the Tokyo results or the Asia results. You have, it's going to manipulate, or I'm sorry, it's going to hit your stop loss 12% of the time, which is still very strong, about 88% manipulation. It's going to happen about 40% of the time. And you're also going to get a retest type. More often, it's going to be a trend line retest, right? So trend line's always going to be the strongest, it looks like, on most of these. Fair value gap, close second, and then you have, close second is no retest. So this is the problem with Asia. A big chunk of it, they don't retest. It just takes off. So it's very hard to decide when to enter the Asia trade. It's a little more tricky, but the moves seem to be pretty big if you catch them. That's the only thing with the Asia session. They're a little bit more cutthroat during that time. And then as far as the distribution goes, you can see right here, 20% of the time it does a multiple of 10 of whatever you risk, which is insane. So that's the highest percentage, which is unprecedented. But you're still getting all the little ones in here, right? But just know that holding is somewhat advantageous in this particular session. And let's see, anything else on here? Cool. All right, I do run a scenario here at the very end that's going to tell you how much money you would make if you were just to use $100 for any given session. So stick around for that, because I think that's the most important part of this whole video. And then for those of you guys across the pond, we have the London results. It's going to hit your stop loss about 15% of the time, manipulate 40% of the time. It's going to retest the trend line most often, okay, followed by no retest, and then also 10R percentage here. So it does tend to run when it does run 2 to 3R, and essentially anything under 2R is about 21%. So you could almost bank on anything over 3 with the London session. That's very encouraging to see that you could at least get 3 multiples of whatever you're risking on all 3 sessions almost. So I did run a hypothetical that if you were to throw $100 at each one of the multiples of risk to reward, which one would actually be the most advantageous, or which one would you profit the most? And so I want to get into that a little bit here. And so this is a little bit drier of a visual, but this has a lot of information packed into it. So let's just start with the Asia session since we're already on it. And if you look at this particular spreadsheet, you're gonna see here that the 1R, you would win if you held to 1R 25 times, you lose 6, 80% win rate, you'd make about $1,900. Okay. But as you go up in risk, meaning holding longer, 2R, 3R, 4R, right? You're gonna win less, right? Okay, you're gonna lose more, but your gains are gonna be bigger. So there's a payoff for that. And the one that seems to win the most at $5,900 is the 5R. So 5R for Asia seems to be the one that you want to hold for most often, because this would be the result at the end of the month if you just risked $100 each trade, which is insane. Let's check London real quick. So London, if you look at London, let's see, 78% win rate for 1R, but then as soon as you start coming down the risk curve, right, you're holding for 4R seems to be the one that actually won out. So the 4R at $7,300 is insane. If you're just risking $100 each trade, you would make $7,300 as long as you held for 4R every single day for every single trade, as long as you're guessing the correct direction, of course. And then New York. Let's look at New York. This is the session I trade the most, and for this particular session, this is all over the map, but it looks like 2R for New York, which is what I've been experiencing. Like 2.5R is where I've noticed we gotten cut off. And so it's a lot lower of multiples for the New York session compared to the other 2 sessions. I would think that New York you would get the most profit, or you'd be able to hold the longest, but it's not true. It's actually going to be London. So London seems to be the most trustworthy session to hold the orb strategy for at least a 4R to make a decent multiple, right? $7,300 by just risking $100 on each one of those trades every day for 30 days would yield $7,300. All right, guys, so this is more of an informational type of video for those of you guys that are really using this trade and trying to maximize it to its potential. That's what this video is about. Very niche. It's not for beginners, and I get it. If you guys are just jumping on this channel and you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, you'd have to watch a lot of other videos to know what I'm talking about for this one. But for those of you guys that are up on this particular strategy, this is gold for you guys. All right, and I did this on Bitcoin, by the way. All this back data is on Bitcoin. If you watch all my other videos, that's all I trade for this particular strategy. So all that being said, guys, try and keep your trades tight, your vibes high, and try not to get wrecked. I'll see you guys in the next video.